gonna kick up our heels and get out on the floor down at Bubba Shag Shag.
Bubba Shag Shag.
Down at Bubba Shag Shag.
Bubba Shag Shag.
I tell